Hello, I'm State Senator John Kavanagh, and welcome to another edition of Kavanagh's Corner, my constituent video report on the happenings at the Arizona State Legislature, and this edition is for the week of February 13th. Well, the Election Committee passed out one of my bills, SB 1471, Ballot Tabulation, Hand Count Comparison. There's a lot of arguing about whether or not hand counting ballots are better or worse than machine counting, and whether hand counts are even feasible. This bill sets up an experiment. We're going to randomly select about 1,000 ballots, and we're going to take them and first put them through a machine. Then we're going to take those same ballots and we're going to give them to election workers who are going to conduct a hand count of all the officers on those ballots the way it is done during a regular election. While they're doing this count, they'll be timed to find out exactly how many workers can do how many hand counts per hour. Knowing this, we could then extrapolate as to how long would it take to count all of the ballots in a regular election. Once we get the two ballot totals, we compare them. If in fact they're different, then one method is wrong. And how do we find that out? Well, we take the ballots and we go to a second machine and we count it in the second machine. And we take the ballots and we give it to a second group of hand counters and they count the ballots again. If the machine counts are the same, then that would suggest that the machine is accurate. If the ballot counts are the same, that would suggest that the hand count is accurate. But if they're different, that would tell us which one has problems. In addition, because we've timed the rate that you can do hand counting of ballots, if that turns out to be accurate, we could then determine how long would it take in an actual election with 1 million or more ballots to actually get the results in. So hopefully we'll settle that issue about can it be done and is it accurate. I'm talking about hand counts with this process. I had a bill 1041 which also appropriates some money to improve the security of the state web system and computer system to prevent hacking and other problems that might invade your privacy. Moving on to the government committee. In that committee, I passed SB 1148, Law Enforcement Video Recording Fees. Police departments approached me. They were concerned about the very high cost of providing police video camera footage to the press or general members of the public who request to see that footage. This is allowed under the public records law because that film is a public record. But the problem is that it's very expensive to process that footage. It's not just a matter of finding that police officer's footage for that period of time, making a copy and giving it to the person. That footage has to be reviewed by either lawyers or people trained in the law, because there are certain things that have to be redacted or removed from the film before it's released to the public. Things like the images of children, the images of crime victims, data like social security numbers. So it takes a while to find them and then blur them out. So it can be quite expensive to do one of these videos. And if somebody asks for the video at a shooting or high profile situation, there may be 10 different officers there, so there's 10 different videos, making the cost even greater. Well, the taxpayer shouldn't be paying for this cost. The people who want the video should be paying. And this would allow police departments to be reimbursed for the costs, which is mostly the time of personnel to produce those videos. Let me make clear though, we're not talking about police video body camera footage that would go to a court as part of evidence. That would be subpoenaed and there would be no charge. This is when ordinary citizens or TV stations ask for the footage. They'll simply have to pay, rather than the taxpayers, the cost of getting that type of information. So moving on to the Education Committee, I had a bill go out of there, SB 1040, Public Schools Restrooms Reasonable Accommodations. This is a compromise bill. This is a bill which attempts to balance the legitimate modesty needs of students, K-12 students, with the right or ability of a transgender student, a student who has in their mind that they're a different gender than their biology, balance their needs for restrooms, showers, locker rooms, and even overnight accommodations on school trips. What my bill says is that you can only go into the restroom, locker room, shower in a school, or a room on a school trip with people who are of the same biological gender at birth as you are. And if a person cannot or will not do that, and we're talking about a transgender person who doesn't want to do that, who insists on going to the biological opposite facility, then they couldn't do that under this law, but the school would be required to make a reasonable accommodation, which means provide them with a single user restroom, shower, or locker room, or take take the other facilities and make it available just to them for a certain time. Realistically, people are instinctively modest. It's historic, it's universal. It goes back to Adam and Eve hiding behind the bush after Eve ate the apple. A 14-year-old girl does not want to be in a school shower standing next to an 18-year-old biological male who thinks that he's a female. This bill would protect those young girls and other students from that, but by the same token, provide a facility for the transgendered person. Moving on, let's go to the MAPS committee. I did an appropriation for the Crime Victim Notification Fund. This is the fund that notifies crime victims about the progress of their case. It tells them if there are court hearings coming up that they might want to go to and testify against the person who victimized them. It tells them the status of the person who victimized them. Are they incarcerated, or are they out on the street where the victim might want to be careful? It gives extra money to speed up that system. I also had a bill on law enforcement investigations. Some police departments, in particular the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, are years behind in doing internal police discipline investigations. Now, we're not talking about police officers who are charged with crimes. Those are criminal investigations. This bill doesn't deal with that. We're talking about police officers who are charged with violating departmental rules or maybe being discourteous to somebody, non-criminal infractions. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, in some cases, are 5 years backlogged in completing the investigation. This is unfair to the police officer, who has a cloud of suspicion over their heads, which might stop a promotion, or if they wanted to transfer to a different department, might stop the other department from accepting them because of this open case. It's also not fair to people who press charges against police officers to have this case go on for years and years and years. Sometimes witnesses die or move away. This law basically says you have 1 year to do this, to clear up your 5-year backup. And hopefully the cases will be expedited quickly and there'll be justice done for all. I also had a bill on criminal justice data collection. We have an agency, the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission, which is charged with collecting data on all aspects of the criminal justice system concerning crimes and processing. They get data from the police, they get data from the prosecutors, from the courts, from the probation department, from prosecutors also. This tells us how well the system is functioning, how much crime, how long does it take for cases to go through, what are the characteristics of criminals. This bill will provide the money for them to properly organize and computerize this information so it can be dispensed to ordinary citizens and policymakers like myself when we're going to do legislation to change and hopefully improve the criminal justice system. Moving on to the Judiciary Committee. Today, my bill on sentencing enhancements for drug-free zones passed out. Right now we have drug-free zones around schools. This will expand the drug-free zones and include the area around drug rehabilitation centers and parks. And it only deals with drug dealing. So if somebody is dealing drugs near a recovery center, a detox center, where there are people who are trying to get off drugs, they don't need drug pushers outside selling, or if they do it in a park, there will be an enhanced penalty for that type of dealing. Also had a bill, 1291, that is attempting to do reforms and give more due process to guardianship cases. Guardianship or probate cases are situations where people who cannot make their own decisions. It might be a child because they're underage. It could be an adult because they've lost their mental facilities. In these cases, guardians are appointed to oversee their affairs. They have legal powers to act as if they were the person. There can be a lot of abuse in these areas. Even family members will sometimes fight with each other and try to get control of the person's assets. So this attempts to give more due process and more openness and correct some of these problems. Finally, I had a bill on animal shelter definitions. Right now, animal shelters are required to spay and neuter animals before they give them out to adoption. And we apply that right now to dog pounds. However, this will also expand that requirement to animal shelters, many of them nonprofits. My wife is on the board of Fearless Kitty, an organization that takes in stray cats and adopts them out. All responsible organizations spay and neuter the cats before they adopt them out, because we're trying to control the pet population so you don't have more strays that have to be taken in and brought to shelters. So this bill simply says that all of them have to do that, because there are a few small ones that aren't doing it, but should do that. I did have a bill that was voted out on the floor, so it's going to be going over to the House for similar processing. That is my nuclear energy management appropriation. All of the companies that co-own the Palo Verde nuclear power plant, they have to contribute fees into a fund that is used to prepare emergency evacuation plans and to give money to local police and fire departments to conduct safety drills or evacuation drills. Now, we don't think this will ever be necessary. It never has been necessary. But if there were a serious nuclear incident at that plant, we want the police and fire department to know how to properly respond, and we want to have the people in the area quickly and safely evacuated, and the monies in this fund are being appropriated to further those ends. And finally, my eyeglass prescription bill passed out on third read, and it too is on its way to the House to be processed there. I recently got a pair of eyeglass prescriptions and once again realized that the prescription for my new lenses was only good for a year. Well, I've had eyeglasses most of my life, and I don't need my eyeglasses changed every year because my prescription doesn't change that much. So it's very frustrating to go into your optician or whoever makes your glasses and say, I want a new lens, I want a new frame, mine broke, and to be told that, you can't get a new eyeglasses because your prescription is 13 months old. So my bill raises the life of a prescription from 1 year to 2 years. That's pretty much the standard around the country. However, I do have a safety measure in there which says if the prescribing doctor or optician believes that because of your young age, where eyes change more quickly, or maybe because you have some ocular condition that requires more frequent prescription changes, that the prescription can be written for less than 2 years. So that's this week's action, a very busy week. Next week there's only one committee meeting, my Appropriations Committee, so I'll have some more bills to report on. But we're going to begin taking all the committee bills that we passed over the last 3 weeks to the floor for Committee of the Whole and third reading votes. So there'll be plenty for me to report on next week, and I urge you to tune in to next week's Kavanagh's Corner, the video constituent services report of me, State Senator John Kavanagh. Thank you for watching.